Hi, my name is Laura Hess, and this presentation is going to talk about surveys as a data collection tool for HPT. Everyone knows what a survey is. We've taken many of them in our lives, but looking at surveys in regards to HPT and data collection, I came up with 3 types of surveys in the research I was looking at. One was exploratory, where you're trying to go in and understand a particular issue or topic without any predetermined notions of the expected responses. A descriptive survey is used to describe employee perceptions and characteristics within the organizations and how they are associated. And then an explanatory survey is used to explain how relationships between the employee characteristics and the organization are affecting that performance. Another thing to consider when looking at types of surveys or creating surveys is the benefits of web versus paper. Majority of people are conducting surveys via web surveys now, but a lot of the research I was coming up with said don't discredit paper, especially if your intended audience that you're sampling is technologically challenged or they don't have good access to it. That paper can still be a valuable tool if technology is going to prove a barrier to survey success. So types of questions in the survey was much more relevant, I feel, to HPT and what type of data are you looking for. Most people use some sort of scale questions, Likert scale or open-ended questions to go more in depth into their research. Open-ended can be very valuable for adding depth to surveys. But one of the things I was most interested in is the idea of this dual response question. And this really comes up in the Watkins text that we're using for this class. So if you haven't read this chapter yet, I really suggest you go back and take a look at it. A dual response question helps you identify and quantify the performance gap by asking questions about the current performance and the desired or optimal performance at the same time. So you're looking at what is that performance gap with the employee's perspective. This doesn't have to be used just with Likert scale or scale questions. It can be used with multiple choice. It can be used with open-ended questions. So it can be a really versatile tool, but really something that helps you get an employee perspective on that performance gap for HPT. So definitely do take a look at this chapter if you haven't looked at it yet. What are the strengths of surveys overall? So the biggest strength for surveys is they easily allow you to gather data from a large number of people in multiple locations all at the same time. Surveys can also generate both facts and perceptions about the organization. So they're giving you employee opinions and feedback that way, but it also can give you facts about how many hours a day do I spend doing this, or how many times do I log into this, so they can give you more hard number type of data. Another strength that people really do appreciate is that surveys are more anonymous than interviews. So you have that protection from retribution, and so employees are more likely to give you honest opinions, especially if they're saying something critical. Employees are also very cost effective to produce and send out, and they can be very versatile, and so you can really customize them to each situation. A weakness of surveys, however, number one that came up was survey fatigue. And most people relate survey fatigue to before the survey fatigue, as it's caused by the overwhelming number of surveys we get in our daily life. So they're less likely to engage with the survey or want to take it. I was more concerned, though, the more I read about during the survey fatigue, which is when participants either back out of the survey or they speed through it and don't really give you good answers or accurate answers. And this is typically attributed to poor design, that you're asking too many questions, too many open-ended questions, you're asking leading questions or repeating questions. So really looking at that design element of how you're structuring your questions and what are you asking is really important to the success of your survey. Another weakness is that surveys record perceptions, not performance. So a survey is a snapshot of that day, of that one moment in time, and they typically just get employee perceptions and not necessarily our true indicator of performance, which is one of the books I found. It's actually owned by Econ Library. If you want to go check it out, was by a Dr. Beam about the problems with survey data. His opinion was that all surveys are terrible. You should never use them. They can only give you inaccurate data. And that is because surveys only give you answers and not the ability to know if the info is correct or incorrect. And he strongly feels you should not use surveys to gather information. Takes it a little bit far, but it was an interesting read. So I do suggest you take a look at that one. The citation is in the references page here. So what are some best practices for creating surveys? Consult design literature. Don't assume you know how to create a good survey. There's lots of literature out there on best practices. Take a look at that. Create a common understanding with the people you're trying to survey. Don't use fancy language, fancy structure. Make sure they understand what you're asking. Don't write one survey to fit all audiences. If you're surveying a diverse group, customize that as best you can. It's also really important to over sample, especially for important stakeholder groups. If you need a good sample as 50 responses, you need to send out at least 200 surveys. So send out more expecting you're going to get less back. Don't use leading questions was another big best practice that came up in a lot of places that can really skew your data and not give you an accurate view of the information you're looking for. Also, stay focused. Only ask the questions you need to get the information you need. Don't let your survey have too many questions. So I'm going to post this PowerPoint with this video. And so if you want to look at some of these citations and information I've found, it will be up on the page. Thank you.